The rain had stopped only moments ago, but the air still carried the chill of a lonely night. Streetlights flickered above the quiet road, their pale glow stretching across the empty sidewalks. Near an old convenience store with its metal shutter pulled down and the sign "Closed" hanging crookedly, a young woman sat on the curb, her back pressed against the cold wall. Her clothes were damp, her hair clinging to her face, and in her arms she held a tiny baby wrapped in a thin blanket that barely shielded it from the cold. She rocked the baby gently, whispering soft words of comfort, even as her own voice trembled from exhaustion. The store had been her last hope. She'd walked miles to get there, hoping to find milk for her hungry child, only to discover it was closed hours earlier. The streets were silent now, except for the occasional sound of passing cars far away, none slowing down, none noticing her. Her name was Anna, a single mother who had been running from more than just poverty. She was escaping the echo of betrayal, abandonment, and a world that had grown cruelly indifferent to the weak. She had lost her job 2 weeks ago, when her employer refused to give her another chance, after she brought her baby to work one morning. Since then, she had been moving from one cheap room to another, selling whatever she could, eating little so her baby could eat more. Tonight, she had nowhere left to go. The baby stirred in her arms, crying weakly, its little face pressed against her chest. "I know, sweetheart. I know you're hungry," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. She looked up at the cloudy sky and took a deep breath. "God, please, just give me one more miracle. I can't let him suffer." Far down the road, headlights approached, bright beams slicing through the misty air. Anna turned her face away, afraid of being seen in her state, afraid of pity. But the truck didn't pass her by. It slowed down, the tires crunching softly against the wet road, and then it stopped just a few feet away. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a man in his mid-30s wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. His face was kind but tired, the look of someone who had seen both the beauty and burden of life. He noticed her instantly, the mother clutching her baby beside the closed store, and for a moment he simply stood there watching quietly. Something in the scene struck him deep. His name was Mark, a single father who had lost his wife in an accident 3 years earlier. Since then, he had been raising his little girl alone, learning to balance work and fatherhood, with the scars of grief still lodged in his heart. Maybe that's why he couldn't drive past. He saw not just a stranger, but a reflection of his own past pain, the helpless nights, the loneliness, the quiet prayers whispered to an unanswering sky. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked gently, approaching slowly so he wouldn't scare her. Anna flinched, clutching her baby tighter. "I'm fine." "Please just go," she murmured, her voice cracking. Mark crouched down to her level, his eyes soft but firm. "You don't look fine. You look like you haven't eaten in days. Let me help you, please." She shook her head, tears welling up again. "I don't want your pity. I just need to find a store that's open. My baby hasn't eaten since morning." Mark's heart clenched. He looked at the tiny baby, whose face was pale and lips dry, and something inside him broke. "Listen," he said quietly. "There's a 24-hour diner about 10 minutes from here. They have warm food, and I can get milk for your baby. Please let me take you there." Anna hesitated, her instincts torn between fear and desperation. She didn't know him. The world had taught her not to trust anyone, especially strangers. But the baby cried again, a sound so weak, so painful that it cut through all her hesitation. "All right," she finally whispered. Mark opened the passenger door of his truck, quickly adjusting the heater. "Get in. It's warm inside." She climbed in slowly, clutching her baby close. The heat from the vents hit her face, and for the first time in hours, she felt something that resembled comfort. Mark got behind the wheel and started driving. Neither spoke for a while. The silence was heavy but not uncomfortable. The baby soon stopped crying, lulled by the warmth and the steady hum of the engine. After a few minutes, Mark broke the silence. "What's your baby's name?" "Eli," she said softly, looking down at her sleeping son. "Beautiful name," he replied with a faint smile. "My daughter's name is Grace. She's 4 now. Keeps me on my toes every day." That made Anna look at him for the first time. There was something honest about his voice, something that told her he wasn't just being kind. He understood. "You're raising her alone?" she asked hesitantly. He nodded. "Yeah, lost my wife in a car accident. Since then it's just been me and Grace." Anna's eyes softened. "I'm sorry." He shrugged lightly, though his eyes flickered with sadness. "It's okay. Some wounds don't really heal, but you learn to live around them. I know how hard it is doing it alone. That's why I stopped. I couldn't just drive away." When they reached the diner, Mark parked and opened her door for her. Inside, the smell of warm food hit her immediately. Fresh bread, coffee and soup. The waitress glanced curiously at them but smiled kindly when Mark asked for milk and some food to go. Anna sat at the booth, trying not to cry again, as the warmth of the place and the kindness of a stranger finally began to melt the icy numbness inside her. When the food arrived, she fed her baby first, watching as little Eli drank hungrily. Mark sat quietly across from her, giving her space. When Eli finally drifted to sleep, Anna took a deep breath. "Thank you for stopping," she said quietly. "You didn't have to." "Maybe not," Mark replied, "but I wanted to. Sometimes life brings people together for a reason." Anna looked at him, her eyes tired but filled with emotion. "I lost everything," she confessed. "My husband left before Eli was born. My parents told me I made my bed and had to lie in it. I tried to work, but no one wants to hire a woman with a baby. Tonight I had nowhere left to go." Her voice cracked, and she covered her face, ashamed of her tears. Mark reached across the table, gently placing his hand over hers, not in pity, but in quiet solidarity. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. "You're stronger than you think, Anna. Don't give up now." They talked for hours that night, about dreams, pain, and the kind of resilience that only people who have lost everything understand. By the time they left the diner, dawn was starting to break, painting the sky in shades of gold. Mark offered her a place, to stay for the night, a spare room at his small house outside town. She hesitated but saw the sincerity in his eyes and agreed. As the truck rolled away from the diner, Anna looked down at her baby and then at the rising sun. For the first time in a long while, hope stirred quietly in her heart. And as the screen fades to black for viewers, a soft narration whispers, "Sometimes the kindest souls are the ones who carry the heaviest scars." Don't ignore. Someone who looks lost, you, might be the miracle they've been praying for. The sun rose slowly over the quiet town, painting the rooftops in pale gold and pink as birds began to sing their gentle morning chorus. Anna blinked against the soft light filtering through the curtains, momentarily forgetting where she was. It took a second for the memories to return. The rain, the closed store, the truck stopping, and the kind man who had offered her shelter. She turned her head slightly and saw Eli sleeping peacefully in a small crib by the window. Mark must have set it up for her sometime in the night. She sat up quietly, her body still heavy with fatigue, but her heart lighter than it had been in months. The scent of coffee drifted from the kitchen, and she followed it softly, careful not to wake the baby. When she stepped into the small kitchen, she saw Mark already awake, standing by the counter, flipping pancakes while humming to himself. His daughter Grace, a little girl with bright brown eyes and curly hair, was sitting on the table drawing something with crayons. When she looked up and saw Anna, she smiled instantly. "Hi, are you the lady from last night?" Anna nodded gently, smiling back. "Yes, sweetheart." "And you must be Grace." The little girl nodded proudly. "Daddy said you and your baby needed help. Is your baby okay?" Anna felt her throat tighten, touched by the innocence in her voice. "He's much better now, thanks to your daddy." Mark turned around, smiling warmly. "Good morning. There's coffee if you'd like. And pancakes coming right up." Anna hesitated at first. She wasn't used to such kindness, but she took a seat. "You didn't have to go through all this trouble," she said quietly. "It's no trouble," Mark replied. "I know what it's like to have nothing but still need to keep going. You're welcome to stay here for a while. at least until you figure out your next step." Anna stared at him, unsure how to respond. Gratitude swelled inside her, but so did a wave of fear, fear of trusting again, fear of depending on someone who might leave like everyone else had. But when she looked into Mark's steady eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time: sincerity. Over the next few days, something beautiful began to grow in that small, humble house. Anna helped around the kitchen, cleaned, and even began babysitting Grace when Mark went to work. Grace, in turn, adored Eli, often sitting beside his crib, singing made-up songs to make him smile. The laughter that filled the house each morning felt like sunlight, warming places that had long been frozen. For Mark, coming home to find Grace and Anna playing together was something that healed wounds he didn't realize were still open. He hadn't laughed this freely in years. Every evening after Grace had gone to bed, he and Anna would sit in the living room, talking over tea. They talked about everything: their pain, their fears, and the dreams they once had but buried under survival. Anna confessed that she used to love painting but had sold all her supplies to buy baby formula months ago. Mark encouraged her gently, saying, "Maybe it's time you start again. You can't let the world steal what makes you feel alive." A week passed, and then another. What started as a desperate night slowly turned into a fragile but real beginning. One afternoon, while Mark was at work, Anna was sitting in the living room with Grace and Eli when there was a knock at the door. It was Mark's friend Tom, a cheerful mechanic who often stopped by. "Hey, you must be Anna," he said kindly. "Mark's told me a bit about you. Said you've had a rough time, but you're tougher than most people he knows." Anna smiled shyly. "He said that?" Tom nodded. "Yeah, he admires you, though he probably won't say it out loud." The comment caught her off guard, and she looked away, her heart beating faster for reasons she couldn't explain. That night, when Mark came home, he found her painting at the kitchen table. She had found an old sketch pad and some half-dried paint Grace used for school projects. She looked up, startled, as he walked in. "I hope you don't mind," she said quickly. "I just needed something to do while dinner's cooking." Mark smiled. Looking at the unfinished painting, a simple but beautiful piece of a sunrise breaking through clouds. "It's amazing," he said softly. "You should keep doing this. You have talent, Anna." She smiled faintly. "It's been years since anyone said that to me." Later that night, after Grace had gone to bed and the baby was asleep, they sat on the porch together. The night air was cool, the stars scattered across the sky like silver dust. "You know," Mark began, "before my wife died, she used to sit out here and paint too. She said it made her feel closer to her dreams." Anna looked at him quietly. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to bring up memories." He shook his head. "No, it's okay. You remind me of her, not because you look alike, but because of your strength. You keep going even when life gives you every reason to stop." Anna's eyes filled with tears, though she tried to blink them away. "I'm not strong, Mark. I'm just surviving." "Surviving is strength," he said simply. "And you've done it alone. That takes more courage than you realize." In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, a quiet understanding, a bond born not out of romance, but out of shared brokenness. Over the following weeks, the rhythm of their days became familiar. Mark would go to work early, Anna would take care of the children, and in the evenings they'd share dinner together. They laughed, they talked, and slowly, something inside both of them began to heal. Anna found a part-time job at a local art shop that Mark's friend helped her get, and with each paycheck she started to save. She planned to rent a small place of her own, but part of her heart ached at the thought of leaving. Grace had started calling her Aunt Anna, and Eli smiled every time. Mark lifted him up. The house had begun to feel like a home, not just a shelter. Then one evening, as rain began to fall again, Anna stood by the window, staring at the familiar sight of droplets racing down the glass. Mark walked up behind her. "You okay?" he asked. She turned, smiling faintly. "Just thinking about how different life feels now, about how one moment, one small act of kindness can change everything." Mark nodded. That's what my wife always believed. She used to say, when you can't see the light, be the light for someone else. Anna looked at him, tears glistening in her eyes. You were that light for me. Mark, you and Grace saved me and my baby. He smiled softly. Maybe you saved us too. You brought laughter back into this house. You reminded me that even after the worst pain, life can begin again. As thunder rumbled in the distance, Eli began to cry and Anna hurried to comfort him. Mark watched her tenderly. Realizing something he hadn't expected, his heart had started to open again. Not in the way it once did, but in a gentler, more cautious way. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years he felt hope. Weeks later, Anna had saved enough to move into a small apartment nearby. The day she packed her things, Grace clung to her leg, crying. Don't go, Aunt Anna. Please stay. Anna knelt down, hugging her tightly. I'll still visit every day, sweetheart. I promise. Mark stood by the doorway, his expression mixed with pride and sadness. You've come a long way, he said softly. I'm proud of you. Anna smiled, though tears slipped down her cheeks. I couldn't have done it without you. As she was about to leave, Mark reached into his pocket and handed her a small box. Inside was a new set of paintbrushes. For your new beginning, he said. She looked up at him, her lips trembling. Thank you, Mark, for everything. Months passed, and Anna's art began to gain attention. The local shop displayed her paintings, and soon she was earning enough to provide comfortably for Eli. One day, she hosted her first small exhibition, and among the crowd she spotted a familiar face, Mark, holding Grace's hand. He smiled at her proudly, and Grace waved. Anna's eyes filled with tears as she realized how far they'd all come from that dark, cold night beside a closed store to a place filled with light, color, and second chances. As the story ends, the camera fades on the image of Anna painting while Eli plays nearby, Grace laughing beside her, and Mark watching with quiet contentment. A voiceover whispers, sometimes the right people find us when we least expect it. One small act of kindness can change the course of someone's entire life. Be that kindness, because you never know whose story you might rewrite.